Hey YouTube, Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. This is the Klecker Cordovan, designed by Glenn Klecker and sold by Klecker Knives. Now you're probably familiar with that name because there's been quite a number of collaborations with CRKT. I think in the current lineup there's like the Graphite, there's also the Tie Rod, the Nerk Tie. Those are collaborations with Glenn Klecker and Brian Tie and CRKT. Recently the Clax as well has got a lot of attention. You're probably familiar with the name, but maybe you didn't know that you could go to Glenn Klecker's website and from Klecker Knives order a couple blades that are being produced by Klecker Knives rather than in collaboration with someone else, which is pretty cool. And at the price point for this was about $100. I think it's really awesome that you can get sort of an unadulterated, pure design straight from the designer himself. I think that's really awesome. Now, of course, these are production knives. They are, Klecker has obviously secured, I'm going to guess, overseas production and having these made and then selling them through Klecker Knives. So let's get into the review of what I think is a really, really cool knife. Now, before I get into size and weight, I want to zoom in so that you can take a look at how beautiful this blade is. Look at the detail in the handle, look at the bronze accent, the blade shape and how it really flows with the overall shape of the knife. Just really well done, I've got to say. Really, really cool looking, artistic tool. And so, essentially you've got, and I've said this about other knives that I've looked at, you have a sort of a piece of artwork here that's also a very functional tool. I really, really like this. Check out the back where you can see those bronze spacers and the little lock mechanism there. Such a cool looking knife. Now, since we're zoomed in like this, it's a good time to do size and weight. This knife overall is 8.5 inches long. The blade is 3 5/8. And the handle is 4 7/8. It's 3/8 of an inch thick, and all of that weighs in at a fairly hefty 5.8 ounces. Now, I don't know what could be done about that weight, but this is one of the minor hits that I'm going to make on this knife. I feel like this is a gentleman's folder. The look of it, the feel of it, just says gentleman's folder or maybe EDC knife, but the weight means it's going to be a little tough to carry this in, say, dress pants. Now, it's not impossible, I've done it, but I'm just kind of putting it out there that maybe the weight is a little on the high side on this blade. Now, it is solid stainless steel handle, which means you're not going to get much lighter, but you may want to consider that if you really like the look of this knife and think of it as I do, as a knife you'd want to carry maybe to church or if you're going to a wedding or somewhere you want to dress up. Definitely I see this knife fitting that category, but it's going to be a little heavy for some of the clothes you might be wearing at that time. Do a quick size comparison. Here is my Cold Steel Code 4, and there's a lot of similarity in the color and shape of these knives, and as well the overall size is almost exactly the same. So if you have a Code 4, you kind of know what you're dealing with in terms of size. One other comparison, because it's a pretty common blade and because this is a all stainless steel handle as well, there's the Kershaw Cryo 2 beside the Klecker Cordovan. Obviously the Cordovan is a much nicer looking knife, and I think there are other ways in which it's superior to the Cryo 2, but we won't get into that at this point. Now, let's carry on with the blade, then, since that's where we normally go next, and we'll just kind of work our way down the knife from there. Okay, so let's see. Focus, please. Try to hold this still. So there's the blade, and what you have here is 3 5/8 inches of 12C27 Sandvik steel. Now, that is, as far as I'm concerned, it's a good steel. If you go on Sandvik's website, it specifically says this is a steel for blades, and guess what we have here? A blade. Now, in my mind, in my experience, I should say, it's a bit of a step down from 14C28N, which is the Sandvik steel we're most used to hearing about. I did a bunch of cutting purposely with this knife alongside my Kershaw Blur, and the Blur did hold its edge a bit longer through a bunch of cardboard cutting. Now, that said, blade shape also makes a difference when you're doing a task like that, and so the slightly thinner or slightly higher hollow grind on the blur is going to be making a difference there as well. Just so you know, I'm aware of that comparison. However, overall, I found this to be a very good performing blade. I've done all kinds of things with it. I've cut wood, I've cut cardboard, I've opened packages, as well as shaved hair and cut paper, which it does very well. It can take a very, very keen edge. This is one hit that I'm going to make on this knife. For this price point, which is about $100, I would like to see a better steel here. I'd like to see, you know, a 154 CM or S30V or even 14C28N, which I know isn't going to happen because that's proprietary to Kershaw. But I would like to see a slightly better blade steel. And the other thing I would say about this is I did send an email to Klecker Knives to see what the Rockwell hardness was on this, and I have yet to get a response. Now it is the holidays, or the holidays have kind of just ended, so I'll probably get a response in the next little while. And what I'll do is annotate that when it kind of comes in, and I'll let you know what they hardened this to. I'm going to take a guess and say about 57. It just feels like other knives that I know are hardened to about that level. Both feels like that on the sharpener and feels like that as I put it through some testing to see how edge retention is. Now, having gotten out of the sort of technicalities of the blade, I guess I haven't really, because I didn't mention the swedge here. It is a fairly deep hollow grind, and it's got a nice recurve. As you guys know, if you've watched other videos of mine, I am a fan of both the hollow grind and of the recurve. I know some people complain about recurves for sharpening, but I think the functionality of it is really, really good, because you can just get material in there and allows you to really push through it, allows you to pull that belly through whatever material you want to cut and get that cut done very easily. So I think it's a very functional blade shape, as well as a very nice looking blade shape. I love the way you can see the grain in the grind lines kind of going this direction on the flat and then the other direction on the grind. By the way, the grind is a slightly higher polish, or has a slightly shinier finish, which makes it look really cool. I guess you can probably see that there on the camera, how the difference between the more subdued finish on the flats versus the slightly shinier finish on the grind, and it just looks really, really great. Again, I'm going to say this more than once in this video, the aesthetics, the visual appeal of this knife is very, very high. Let's talk next about lockup and deployment. So this is the Klecker lock. You push here, and because of the way this is cut out, I'm going to do that a few times. So because of this cutout, so what you can see is, let's get this where you can see it right. Shut the knife so I don't cut myself. There's a cut made here and one made here, and just those two cuts allow for this bar to exist and to create what is essentially a lock that's integral to the handle, right? So just those two simple cuts and you get a very functional lock. This is a great, brilliant idea, and Glenn Klecker deserves a lot of credit. This is such a cool design, and it allows for, I think one of the things that it does is makes a knife look really, really cool and technical. And so I've got to say I'm a big fan of this kind of lock, and will be, I have a couple other knives already, but I would like to add, I was going to save this for my overall impressions, but I will probably be picking up the slice as well in the not too distant future, largely because of this really cool lock that these have. Now the lock is very functional and very strong, presumably. I mean, in my use and testing, it's held up really well. I would like to see some numbers. You know, I'd like to see someone at Klecker Knives do the cold steel thing where they hang a bunch of weight off this blade to see what happens. I would suggest that this lock would hold up very well, because as you try to close this blade, what you're doing is putting this in tension. This little piece here of the lock mechanism is going to go going into tension, and everyone knows steel under tension, you know, performs really well. So, good lockup. Deployment is only so-so. You can flip it out. It is only flipper, by the way. There's no thumb studs here. Only flipper opening, and that flipper takes a little bit of wrist action to get it to function, okay? And this knife, by the way, I have, you know, made sure it's cleaned and oiled and everything else, so it's about the best that it can be, and it does take a little wrist to get it to open nicely. All right, so there it is. You can deploy the knife. I'm not complaining about deployment. It could just be a little bit smoother. Okay. Now the reason for that is kind of necessary to the way the lock functions. As this knife moves, as the blade moves through its field of motion, it is always experiencing a little bit of pressure from this lock. Okay, so the lock is always pushing on the blade here, and that creates just a little bit of friction all the way through, and it gets highest because it's actually squeezing right here before it locks up, which is why sometimes when you flip this open you're going to get it kind of stalling right about there and not locking up all the way. All right, so that's lockup and deployment. I want to say one other thing about this, and that is for the first few days, normally my practice is when I buy a new knife, get a new knife, I use it for about a month, maybe a month and a half before I Loctite the pivot screw here, okay? Because I want to kind of break it in and get it functioning sort of in a constant way. Now, that was not the case with this knife. The first couple of days, it was constantly having blade play, and I couldn't figure out, it was both side to side and up and down, and so I'd go and tighten up the pivot screw and it would go away, great, but within 5 or 10 flips it would already be developing blade play again. And so finally, after about 3 days of, you know, this constantly the blade play coming back over and over again, I finally said, okay, forget it, I've got to Loctite this thing. Now once I Loctited it and I tightened this pivot down pretty tight, now it's solid as a rock. There's no movement of any kind up and down or side to side. But you just need to know that for me, in this particular one, it would develop blade play over and over again very quickly. Even after, you know, I'd tighten it up, and then within half an hour it would have blade play again. I'd tighten it up, and with half an hour it would have blade play again. And that was, of course, me using and testing the knife. So it's gonna last longer for you if you just tighten it up and put it in your pocket all day, okay? So I did have a slight issue with that. No big deal. I took the screw out, put some Loctite on it, tightened it down, left it overnight, and it's been perfect ever since. So there's what I meant by it can fail to deploy sometimes. There we go. Now, let's carry on into the handle. And of course the handle is one of the coolest things about this knife because it's so well done. This is just a gorgeous, gorgeous knife. See the bronze, the little detail work on the stainless steel here, the G10 inserts, and the fit and finish on all of this is very, very good. The attention to detail is very, very good. Notice here the lanyard hole. Now that lanyard hole has a bronze tube. You know, that did not have to be done. They could have easily just drilled that hole and been done with it. The fact that they took that extra little bit of detail and carried the bronze through into the lanyard hole is just amazing, and shows a level of care, I think, that is one of the reasons you would want to buy a knife directly from the designer. Really, really great looking blade. Now, I will say that what we really care about when we talk about the handle of a knife is how comfortable it is and how useful it is. And I purposely went ahead and whittled my way through a 2x2, and then as soon as I got through it once, broke it off, I went through it again. And purposely I was trying to see how this handle would feel in my hand, and if I would get tired, and if I would get sore, and if the knife would, you know, develop problems, or if I'd accidentally push the lock. The handle performed really, really well. It's very comfortable. The cutouts for your fingers are extremely well placed and just fit my hand very, very well. So I found this handle to perform exceptionally, okay? It's just really, really well done. Now, one last note, in the pocket clip is only right side, so you can do tip up or tip down. Obviously, I'm going to prefer tip up, and probably, as we know, most people do, but it is right side carry only. So sorry about that, lefties. If you do get this knife, you'll have to carry it this way, you know, and kind of flip it around in your hand before deployment. All right, so that's my take on the Klecker Cordovan. Beautiful knife. I think this is a perfect EDC blade. I think it's pretty good as a gentleman's folder, although I did mention the weight is a little higher than maybe I would like to see. And by the way, I don't know, I guess you could try to mill this out inside to save a little bit of weight, but that would add cost. And anyway, so weight is just a little on the high side. That's just sort of an FYI. Overall, I'm really impressed with this knife. It's very nice, very useful. There's a lot of pride of ownership that comes with this knife. This is one of the few times I would say this knife would make a great gift. A lot of times people ask me, what knife should I get? And I always, it's a pretty subjective decision, but I think anyone would look at this knife and go, wow, that is a cool blade. And so I think you could pretty safely purchase this knife for, you know, your dad or your brother or your husband, whatever, and they're really going to like it. And I think the other thing that's really cool about this is Klecker Knives is letting us as consumers get our hands on a designer knife for a production knife price. It is a production knife, I'm aware of that, but the prices are fairly good as far as I'm concerned. Now, as I said, I'd like to see slightly higher end steel for that price point, but other than that, you know, I think this is really, really awesome and very affordable. One last thing to say about this, and that is the functionality of the pocket clip. I kind of forgot. It goes in and out of pocket very easily and retains very well. Overall, I'm definitely a big fan of this. I've carried it a lot. Now, my purpose when buying it was not to carry it as often as I have the last few weeks, but that's been for testing, right? I'm trying to get a handle on the knife. What I plan to do with this is carry it when I go to church, carry it when I'm at a wedding, or any other time where I need to dress up. I think this is a really classy looking, extremely well pulled off knife. Just looks amazing. I don't know about you, but I'm really, really attracted to this. This is a knife that you can buy just to post pictures on Instagram, right? Really awesome blade. So there you go. That's my take on the Klecker Cordovan. I really enjoy it, and I imagine you will too. Talk to you later, YouTube. Oh wait, hold on. One more thing. If you're still watching, I will be finishing up the video about the 100 subscriber giveaway and pulling that, doing the sort of final draw and letting you guys know who won that giveaway in the next day or so here. Talk to you later. Bye.